My name is Emma and welcome to my channel, Ramble and Fangirl. Today we will be rambling and fangirling about my favorite books of 2018. I had such a great reading year this year. I read 52 books in total, which is the most books I've ever read in my life over the course of a year. I read so many great books as well. Pretty much everything I read was at least a 3-star rating. Maybe like 1 or 2 books for school that I had to read was not as great, but you know, I persevered. I did read a lot of hyped books of the book community this year because I haven't had time for the past couple years to get to all the big buzzed about series, so be warned. So I have 15 books to share with you that made it into my favorites of the year list, but I do have some honorable mentions to start. The first honorable mention is a trilogy that each book I gave 4 stars, but overall the series was a 5-star rating from me, and that was the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy by Jenny Han. I read this book for the first time this year, and it's funny because I never really thought I would read this. I remember looking at it and picking it up in bookstores when I was in middle school, early high school, and for a long time, for the past couple years, I've actually thought that I disliked contemporary, like I wouldn't read it because I just didn't like it. And this was the year that changed that. And while this wasn't the book that really made me think I liked contemporary, I think it's the one that made me realize that, Emma, you do like romantic comedies because you like romantic comedy movies and TV shows, so you like romantic comedy books. And I read this in anticipation of the movie because I saw the trailer and I was like, dang. So I was just like, you know what? I know that this looks like it's going to be a great time, but I really do want to read the book first. So I finally did. I read it. I was like, oh my god, I love this book so much because I love how much this series in general, you know, it's cute and it's light and it's fluffy and it makes your heart swoop and soar because Peter Kavinsky. But the family dynamic and the sister dynamic and all the other undercurrents in this book below the kind of surface level cutesy romance is just so phenomenal and what makes me love this series. Because I think if it was only a love story, I'd be like, yeah, that was cute and move on with my life. But I think about this series all the time. I wish I had read this book series when I was younger because I think I would have been a lot more at peace with being like a really girly person who likes, you know, fancy dresses and cute clothes and stuff, but is also really cool and badass, but doesn't have to sacrifice the kind of softness of spirit to be viewed as a strong person. And so I really love this series. And so if you've watched the movie, then go read this series if you haven't already. The next honorable mention is kind of one in 2 parts, and that is the Percy Jackson series and the Heroes of Olympus series. Obviously, I've read these before. I love them so much, so these were a reread for me, and I read the whole 5 books, 10 books in total this past fall, and I reread it with a friend, and that was the best reading experiences I've had in a really long time. I haven't really ever like read 10 books within the same fictional worlds with one singular person, and that's really cool, and that was a really fun experience, and getting to revisit this world, which is so influential to me and in my life. And over the course of this reread, I really came to the conclusion that while Harry Potter, it was super influential in, you know, getting me to read and to like reading and to know that I like magic and fantasy and all that kind of stuff, Percy Jackson, I think, had a bit more of a personal impact in my life because I read it during like some of the worst years of my life, and having these characters with me when I really didn't have friends, lol, having these characters with me through those times really, I think, saved my life. These books in particular, along with Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunter books, really, really saved my life in those 4 or 5 years. Rereading this series was so fantastic, and I love these books so much and those characters, and it was really cool rereading it. You know, it like solidified my love for certain characters and certain books. I was like, yeah, okay, like I was right. Like I haven't been fooling myself for years thinking I like that character or I like that book. And then other ones I'm like, oh, I don't like that character as much, or I don't like that book as much, or vice versa. Like I love that character or that book way more than I thought I did. And these 2 books, in particular, The Last Olympian and The Son of Neptune, were books that, you know, I enjoyed the first couple times I read them, but this year they really stood out to me as some of my favorites. I have always said that The Battle of the Labyrinth is my favorite Percy Jackson book, but The Last Olympian is like seriously a strong contender. They're pretty much tied now. It's such a good conclusion to that arc and to that series, and I love it so much. And then The Son of Neptune is so good. I think Hazel and Frank are super underappreciated. They're really good characters and they're really, really interesting, and I really like their dynamic with Percy, and you don't really get to see that throughout the rest of the series. And this book is just so special to me because this all takes place on the west coast of North America, and specifically Frank is from Vancouver, which is where I am from, and there's a scene near the end of the book where they're traveling from Seattle into Vancouver on that chariot. And they pass by a beach that was like the beach in my hometown when I read this book, and that was like the coolest thing ever. That was a really long tangent on the Percy Jackson series, but honestly, they deserve it. I love them so much, and they're only an honorable mention because I reread them, and they weren't new to me reads. And the next honorable mention is also a reread, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is my favorite book of all time, and I first read it back in 2013, I think, and I just fell in love with it, and I've been saying it's my favorite book ever since, but I decided, you know what, I read that when I was 13. A lot of my opinions on media have changed since then, and I really wanted to reread this like 6 years later, and it's still my favorite. I love this book so much. If you don't know what this is about, it's about this circus that comes at night with no warning. It travels around the world, and the story is all these like interlacing timelines. It's just so atmospheric and beautiful, and I highly recommend that anyone read it, especially if you like Laini Taylor's books or Maggie Stiefvater's books, and Libba Bray as well. If you like any of those books, this one would definitely be something that I would suggest you pick up. Alrighty, now we're getting down to my favorite books of 2018, the actual list, the actual countdown, and the criteria for being on this list is that I had to have given the book a 5-star rating, and it had to be a new to me read this year. Not necessarily like a new release, but a new to me read. It wasn't a reread. So yeah, let's just get started. Number 15 is The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzie Lee. This is the second book in the Montague duology. This book takes place about a year and a half later after the events of the first novel, and follows Felicity's journey in her wanting to pursue being a doctor. But it's like 1727. Women are not respected in the medical fields or in a lot of fields. Along her adventures, she meets these two other really badass women who are quite different from her. One of them is a pirate, and one of them is a very feminine but really badass naturalist, so she really likes like plants and animals and studying all that. It's so good. I really enjoyed this book. I didn't love it as much as Gentleman's Guide, but it was just such a good, truly feminist read. Felicity is so awesome, and it's really cool being able to see inside her head, because in Gentleman's Guide, you only see her through her older brother Monty's perspective, and you know, sibling dynamic. He kind of thinks she's annoying. He doesn't really understand a lot of her motivations. He doesn't understand a lot of the problems that women faced in his time. Getting to see that side of things from Felicity's point of view was just so interesting, and I really enjoyed it. My only critique of this book was that it felt kind of slow. It wasn't as adventure-y as the first one, but other than that, I really enjoyed this book. I love Felicity so much, and she is aromantic and asexual, and that's just so awesome. We hardly ever get that in books, especially like historical fiction books, and I love Mackenzie Lee, as you will see on the rest of this list. But yeah, if you have not read any of Mackenzie Lee's books, go do so. But if you haven't read this one, but you have read her other ones, I do highly recommend picking it up. Coming in at number 14 is Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. This book, guys, I'm sure a lot of you have read it, or if you haven't read it, which you should, probably saw the book to movie adaptation Love, Simon, which came out in March of this past year, and this story, this book, is so phenomenal. If you don't know what it's about this boy named Simon. He is 16 and he is gay, but no one knows. He has this pen pal relationship with this boy named Blue, who goes to his school, but he doesn't actually know Blue's identity, and Blue and him are falling in love through these emails that they send each other. And then one day one of his classmates discovers these emails and blackmails Simon into doing things for him so that he won't out Simon. It's such a heartwarming story about, you know, accepting yourself. Like, even if you yourself, like, you know who you are and you're okay with who you are and you accept yourself, but, you know, letting the rest of the world know who you truly are and how much bravery that takes. That's really what this book is about, and the friendships and the dynamics between all the characters and the family dynamic is just fantastic, and Becky Albertalli is such a funny writer. She makes me laugh out loud. I just love them so much. They make me feel so happy, and this was my introduction to her, and I'm so glad because, as you will see, there are more Becky books on the rest of this list, and everyone should read this book. It's so important. And the movie is such a good adaptation, and everyone should watch that as well to show that love is love, and we all are capable of compassion and bravery and really accepting one another and accepting our true selves. and it's just so good, and I just love it so much. Coming in at number 13 is Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. Oh my god. So everyone who's keeping up with the Shadowhunter world has been waiting for this book for like over a year and a half, and it finally came out in December. I got to meet Cassandra Clare. It's signed. She came to Vancouver like, what? And I got to talk to her about representation in books, specifically bisexual representation, because this series was so groundbreaking for me. It was really my first introduction to YA, and it was the first time in a book that I'd ever seen LGBT representation. It was so life-changing for me, and I love these books so much, and I have such an unending love for them, and this book was no different. I really, really enjoyed it. It's the longest book I think I've ever read, and it's so good. If you don't know what this is about, this is the third book in the third series of the Shadowhunter Chronicles. It's the conclusion to the Dark Artifices, and there's not much I can say without spoiling like literally everything. It's just really awesome, and this series is definitely Cassie's most intricate. We followed the most amount of characters, and they're all so fleshed out, and the storylines are all really well done. Personally, I quite like the Drew and the Ty and the Kit storylines. Those are what I care about the most. I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm so excited for the Wicked Powers to come out. But, you know, we're getting the last hours, which I've been waiting for since, like, I was 13. But I really, really enjoyed this book, and it's just so well done. And I love Cassandra Clare. And, well, I think Lord of Shadows was probably my favorite of the trilogy. This was still very enjoyable. And Christine from Poland Bananas Books said it best, I think, and that this really feels like a kind of City of Glass type series finale, where officially, like, the Wicked Powers is a different series than the Dark Artifices, but truly, the way that this book ends and what it sets up for later storylines, it's really kind of like a midpoint finale. It's not truly a finale. So it doesn't really feel like City of Heavenly Fire or Clockwork Princess in terms of the kind of nice wrapped upness. Some stories in this book are wrapped up nicely, but there's so much more left to be explored, and I am so excited to see what Cassie has in store for us. Coming in at number 11 is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second book in the Six of Crows duology, and holy crap, this book is good. Wow. As I said, it's the second book, so I can't really say anything about like the plot, but Six of Crows follows like these 6 different individuals embarking on a heist together, and then this book follows like the aftermath of that, and there's another heist, and holy crap, it's so good. I remember like being confused at first because within the first little chunk of the book, they're already planning the heist and like it's about to happen, and I'm like, but there's so much left, and then mind blown, plot twisted. You know? So go and read Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, because your life will actually be changed. She is so good at writing heists and creating really, really intricate worlds. It exists in the same world as the Grisha trilogy, but you don't need to read that before reading this series. This was my year that I was introduced to Leigh Bardugo. I've wanted to read this series for literally ever. I had Six of Crows on my shelf for years, and I finally got around to reading it, and I will talk about that a little bit later. But I love Nina Zenik so much. She deserves the world. I love her so much. And Wylan is like my child, and I just want to give him a hug, you know? I feel like Nina and Jesper and Wylan just don't get enough love and attention. And you know what? I'll give them that love and attention. Coming in at number 11 is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Holy crap, I am in love with Laini Taylor's writing. While there's like lots of authors I love for, you know, the way that they construct plot and the way that they do characters, the way that Laini Taylor does world building and her writing style is like so up my alley that I'm just in awe, and I just want to like sit back and go, oh, because it's so good and just so beautiful. There's really no other way to describe the way that she writes and the way that she constructs worlds and builds mythology, and that's like the way I want to be. Like, obviously I'll never be as good as Laini Taylor, but like if I could be half as good and half as talented as her, then I'll be happy in life. If you don't know what Strange the Dreamer is about, it's kind of hard to describe, but it starts out following this character named Laszlo Strange. He is a librarian, and he has this obsession with this lost city named Weep, which is kind of an urban legend where people would go but they'd never come back, and then one day it kind of ceased from existence and fell into myth and lore, but he has really kept up with it in all of his fairy tales and language and mythology and all that kind of stuff. And then one day he gets given the opportunity to go to Weep. And then from there, it's just such a wonderful adventure, and it explores so many good themes. No one is wholly good or wholly bad. It's just so good. It's like demigods and magic and a gorgeous love story, and I will definitely be picking up Muse of Nightmares, which is the sequel to this book. Coming in at number 10 is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I had an interesting experience reading this book because I started it in the summer when I was on vacation. Bad idea. I'm really bad at reading books on vacation, especially big chunkers like these. So I put this away for a while. I'd gotten like 150 pages in and I was just like, I don't know if I'm really feeling this. And I was really sad because I had been so excited to read this book. And then like a month later, I started Avatar: The Last Airbender. And once I finished that, I was like, you know what? I'm really sad. I need to read Children of Blood and Bone. I really feel that watching Avatar: The Last Airbender helped me have like a real appreciation for this story. Children of Blood and Bone is a love letter to Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it's really like Avatar meets Black Panther. There's so many moments where I was like, oh my gosh, look at that Avatar like reference, and like different parts in the plot where I was like, I see where you're going, I see where you're going, and it's just so good. It's inspired by West African mythology, and it's a story about this girl who lives in this land where magic used to exist, and then magic ceased to exist altogether, and she grows up knowing that it was her destiny to learn magic, but it has been stolen from her, and then one day stuff happens, magic starts to return. It's this huge, big adventure story involving a lot of political intrigue and really good friendship and sibling dynamics, and the love story in this book is very good. I listened to this mostly on audiobook. I think I read like one chapter physically, and I'm so glad I read it by audiobook. I think that was really the way to go for me. And so if you like Avatar, if you like Black Panther, if you really want a good fantasy, then this is the one for you. And look how beautiful it is. And the sequel comes out in March. So I'm very, very excited to read that. Coming in at number 9 is another super hyped up book, and that is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And oh my god, does it deserve the hype? I was about a year behind on the train for this book. It came out in like 2017, early 2017, and I read it early 2018, and it absolutely changed my life. Like this was my first audiobook as well, and that absolutely changed my whole reading experience for 2018. This story was just so impactful. It's about the Black Lives Matter movement, specifically about a girl named Star who lives in a lower income African American neighborhood but goes to a mostly all white private school, and then she witnesses one of her childhood best friends get shot whilst unarmed by a police officer, and she's the sole witness. And then the rest of the story is about her learning how and when to use her voice to speak up about issues that matter to her. I'm so glad that I finally did get to reading this book because it's just so well done. If you haven't read this book, definitely go and read this book and watch the movie, because the movie came out in October and it was so fantastic and such a good adaptation, and it's just really, really well done. And I highly, highly recommend. Coming in at number 8 is The Diviners by Libba Bray. I had a similar reading experience with this book as I did with Children of Blood and Bone. I started it in the summer when I was in the middle of doing a show where I was pretty much rehearsing like all day, every day. So I just didn't really have time to read, and I, got like a chapter in and then put it down. And then finally, after finishing Children of Blood and Bone on audiobook, I picked this one up on audiobook and I read the entire thing on audiobook. And it was such a strange experience because it felt like, as I said before, Children of Blood and Bone, it kind of has a similar vibe to the TV show Avatar: The Last Airbender. And then this one kind of felt like I went from Avatar: The Last Airbender to Avatar's sequel series Legend of Korra, which takes place in the same world but is set in the 1920s. And this book's set in the 1920s, and it was just like so weird because I remember like the mind shift and the vibe shift that I had from going from Avatar to Legend of Korra, and it felt so similar going from Children of Blood and Bone to this one. It was just so cool, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I love this so much, and I do. I love this book. I've been wanting to read this book since like 2015. I'm so glad I read it. If you don't know what it's about, it is a paranormal historical mystery novel set in the 1920s in New York, and it follows a really large cast of characters who are all in some way connected to this like major plot line of all these like paranormal murders, like serial killer cult style murders that are happening throughout the city. And it is just so fantastic, so well done. It has like full cast of narrators, which was so good, and the characters are all so well fleshed out, and even like all the side characters, there are some characters that you only see for like a chapter before they get murdered, and you feel like you know them almost as well as the main characters, and that is a skill, I am telling you. So I love this book so much. Libba Bray is fantastic. I've read one of her books previously, and I am definitely going to be continuing this series in 2019, and I'm just so glad that I finally got my stupid ass to read this book because I enjoyed it so much. Coming in at number 7 is a book I've already mentioned in this video, and that is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. This is the first book in the Montague siblings duology series, and it follows Henry Montague, who is a young 18-year-old English lord who is going on his grand tour of Europe. And he goes on this trip with his best friend Percy, who he is in love with, and his sister Felicity, who, as I said, is the main character of The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. And so this one follows them first going to Paris, and then some real big shenanigans go down in Paris, and then they're on the run throughout the rest of Europe, going to Spain and to Italy, and being chased by highwaymen and pirates, and it's just so good, and is such a fantastic look into this historical period, especially because Monty is bisexual, and what it was like for someone who was LGBT to exist in that time. Mackenzie Lee did history in college, so she's such a fantastic historical novelist. She is definitely my favorite historical novelist. She's so funny, and she's just really good at what she does, and is obviously super knowledgeable and super well researched about the stories that she's telling. And she puts historical notes at the back of the books about, you know, the different kind of topics that are touched upon and like the historical context for them, and that made the whole book for me. Like, I really enjoyed my time, and then I read the historical note, I'm like, oh my god, I love this so much. And it's funny because like a lot of people, when they talk about this book, talk about how funny it is and how much it made them laugh and how lighthearted and heartwarming it was. And yes, that's totally true, but this book made me super emotional, and it kind of almost like, because I was thinking that it was just going to be super cute and light and funny, and then it really hit me emotionally. I had to like take a step back and be like, oh, that was a lot. It's just so well done, and I really highly recommend this series. Mackenzie Lee is just so fantastic and such an awesome human being, and I would like literally die if I met her. She's fantastic, and everyone should read everything she writes. Coming in at number 6 is What If It's Us by Becky Albertelli and Adam Silvera. This book was so me. It follows these two boys. The perspective of Arthur is written by Becky, and the perspective of Ben is written by Adam, and it follows them as they meet in New York in the summer. And they have this really cute meet cute, and then they get separated really soon after that, and they don't get each other's information, and they're like, who was that person? I liked them and they were cute, but I don't know their name, I don't know their Instagram. And so each of them decide that they want to find the other person, and then eventually once they do make contact again, they want to be in a relationship, so they keep on going on all these dates and they keep on failing, but they are trying because they, you know, like, there must be a reason why we met and why we found each other again. And it's just so cute. It's so heartwarming, and the ending is like the perfect mix of a Becky ending and an Adam ending. If you have read Adam's books, you know that they're heartbreaking, and if you know Becky's books, you know that they are just so cute and happy, and it's just like a really nice middle spot between their two styles. And it's super theatery and Broadway-y, and just like the perfect me book because it like really touches on like fandom and theater and New York, and their relationship is just so cute. I love this book so much, and all the Hamilton and Dear Evan Hansen references absolutely made my life. Coming in at number 5 is Leah on the Offbeat by Becky Albertalli. Wow, Emma, another Becky Albertalli book. I'm so surprised. But truly, this book was so good. It was my favorite of the 3 Becky books I read this year, and it follows Leah, who is the best friend of Simon from Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda. So this is a sequel / companion novel, and it follows Leah and then like the rest of the gang in their senior year of high school. And it's all about Leah kind of coming to terms with this big chapter of her life ending, and you know, her whole group of friends and what happens after high school, and this is her coming of age story, and it's so cute. Leah is bisexual, and so it like follows a really cute romance with another girl, and it's just so good, and I connect so much with Leah. I am Leah. Like, one of my friends, we've decided he's Simon, I'm Leah, and that's our dynamic. And it's funny because I didn't love Leah in Simon, and I think it's because, you know, when you encounter characters who are so like yourself, sometimes they actually annoy you because they share the same flaws that you do, and you don't like to see that because you're like, oh crap, those are all the parts that make me not awesome. Seeing Leah through her own eyes was so amazing. amazing, and getting to see like myself really represented in this book, and it was just so fantastic. And I read it in like a day, and again, the Hamilton references were so good, and it was just so funny and made me laugh so many times, like laugh out loud laughing and just fall in love. And I want them to make a movie about Leah because she deserves it. She really does. Coming in at number 4 is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This book is fantastic. I love this book so much. It ripped my heart out. When you read Leigh Bardugo books, you hit a certain point where you just like can't stop. That's the only way I can describe it. You're just like, I can't put this down. I was reading it over a big travel day. As I said before, it follows these 6 individuals who are unlikely to really be friends with one another, but they get all grouped up and they have to go on this heist, and it's just so amazing. All of the political intrigue in Leigh Bardugo's books are just really well done. And again, Nina Zemek, I love her so much. She's so great. This book is fantastic. Go and read it. And Netflix, please make a Netflix adaptation of this, like a series. It would be so good. I love this book so much. It's hard to say how much I just absolutely fell in love with Leigh Bardugo's writing and world this year, and I introduced my best friend to this series, and she read it so fast. Like, I was like, I read these fast, but she read them even faster, and I just love it so much, and I'm so excited for King of Scars. Coming in at number 3 is Foolish Hearts by Emma Mills. This book is definitely the most underrated book on this list. It was the Owl Crate Book of the Month in December of 2017. Before I read this book, I hadn't read contemporary in years, and I didn't think I liked it, but something about this book really intrigued me, and I read it in my first week back to school after Christmas break last year, and I was really sad, and I was missing my family, and I was just kind of feeling a little lonely, and so I decided to pick this book up. I was like, you know, well, maybe I won't totally enjoy it, but I think it'll make me feel happy, and oh boy, did I fall in love with this book, and everyone needs to read this book. It's really special. I didn't know I was going to love it as much as I did. It has a really good study of, fandom and family and the way that certain pieces of media can really change our life, and there's like a boy band aspect to it and a like video game aspect, and it was the first book I'd read where theater was really incorporated, and the love interest is so good. Gideon is so fantastic. It's a cute romance, but there's so many more levels to it, and the family dynamic's really good. It has really good representation, which I didn't expect going into it, and just more people should read this book because it just makes me feel so happy. Coming in at number 2 is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't care if reading this book and loving this book makes me basic because it is so fantastic and absolutely deserves all the hype. If you maybe haven't really been paying attention to BookTube in the last 6 months and haven't heard of this book, it basically follows 2 different timelines. One of them is in the present day, and the narrator of that timeline is a woman named Monique, and she works as a journalist for this big, really well-respected magazine company, but she's kind of like low on the hierarchy, and for some reason, this golden age Hollywood starlet asks for her specifically to do an interview, and this starlet, Evelyn Hugo, hasn't taken an interview in years, and there's like a lot of like mystery and gossip and rumors surrounding Evelyn's personal life and career. So Monique goes and meets with her and discovers that Evelyn wants her to write her biography and tells her her life story and why she had 7 husbands. And it is so fantastic and so well written. There's like a mystery aspect to it. So the entire old Hollywood scene that Evelyn sets up, and all the people in the movies she talked about, and like the people she knew and married and dated and fell in love with, and the movies she was in and stuff like that, like that's all fictional. Taylor Jenkins Reid pretty much reinvented an entirely new old Hollywood, like almost as if like this takes place in a slightly parallel universe to ours. But I kept on thinking that like everyone was a real person, like it kind of felt like a true biography, and I know that's how it's meant to feel, but I kept on thinking like, oh, I should go watch that movie so I can see the scene they're talking about, or like I should search up that actress so I know what they look like. Then I would realize I'm an idiot because they're fictional, but this book had such an amazing way of really drawing you into the story, and I want to see it adapted as a movie. Obviously it has to be done right. It just has such really great representation. Evelyn Hugo is a Cuban woman as well, and like that whole like aspect of navigating old Hollywood as a woman of color is explored, and it's LGBT. I knew I would like this book, like I knew I would enjoy it, but I didn't know I would love it as much as I did, and it's just so good. So we've come down to my #1 book of 2018, and this might be a little bit of a surprise, but that is Bygone Badass Broads by Mackenzie Lee. The fact that it's Mackenzie Lee isn't a surprise, but the fact that it is actually a non-fiction book was a surprise to me. If you don't know what this book is, it follows 52 forgotten women who changed the world, just like mini biographies of each of these 52 women who did awesome, cool things, but we don't talk about them in the historical canon. In general, like, history sucks, so like we forget women a lot. You know, we always talk about the token badass women in history, but then we forget that there was other women who were really changing the world. This is a really awesome compilation of all those really cool badass women. I so enjoyed my time reading this. I wasn't even sure if I was going to buy it, and then I did, and then I wasn't even sure if I was really going to read it. Like, I thought it would be like a cute coffee table book that I wouldn't really necessarily read in detail, but then I was just on the train home from buying this book, and I opened it, and I was sucked in and read the entire thing cover to cover. Mackenzie Lee, as I said, does historical narrative really, really well. Each of these mini biographies kind of feel like a mini historical novel, and I want a historical novel on every single one of these women, or like a biopic or something, because I want more. I want to know more about their lives. I want to see them talked about more and expanded upon. It's pretty and accessible and funny, and I highly, highly recommend this. I work at a bookstore, and this is my staff pick, and that might be a little surprising for the people in my life, but I really, really love history, and I really love looking at women in history and marginalized groups in history who don't get enough representation in normal history classes and the normal historical canon, but are really, really awesome, and their stories need to be told more. So yeah, go read Bygone Badass Broads. Your life will be changed. Alright, so that is the end of my favorite books of 2018 video. As I said, I had a really amazing reading year in 2018, and I reread books for the first time in years, and I read all these books that I've been meaning to get to, who I'm so glad that I finally got around to and fell in love with their work, and I'll definitely be reading more from those authors in the future, and I am just so excited for what 2019 will bring for my reading year. I plan on reading Harry Potter again. As I reread Percy Jackson, I was like, you know what? Harry Potter's next on the list, and I'm just so excited for all the releases in 2019, and I really hope to be making more videos on BookTube, as this is something that I take so much joy in, and I had to take a break for a while because I had like a huge life change and a big move, and just had to get used to life being different than it was. But I'm so glad that I really had a fantastic reading year. Reading was the brightest point in my life this past year, and it really reminded me how much I love reading and how much reading impacts my happiness and really influences my life and really fuels my creativity, and that is definitely something I really want to focus on in 2019. So hopefully 2019 will be awesome. I'm really, really excited, and I hope all of you are as well. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really would help me get started on this channel, and if you want to see more bookish content from me, go hit subscribe. I will also be doing musical theater-y type videos as well, and combining my love of musical theater and books, because those are the biggest passions in my life. So yeah, if you also want to follow me on social media, I am on Instagram and Twitter. I will put my handles right here. I hope you have an awesome day. I hope you had a fantastic reading year in 2018. What are you most excited to read in 2019? I think I'm really excited for Cassandra Clare's new books. I think that is like the biggest thing in my brain. But yeah, I'm so excited for this year. Thank you for watching this video, and goodbye, world!